Welcome back, and today's topic is from dread to the courage. We all have some or the other fears all the time, and not all fears are bad. What if you never had a fear of being burnt? Or what if you never had a fear of height? What if you never had a fear of sharp object? You could create a risk for yourself. Your subconscious mind is pre-programmed to ensure that you remain protected. And fears are one such mechanism to make sure that you remain protected. However, when the fear becomes a dread, where you start dreading the consequences, the possibilities, the future, people, and certain social circumstances, future outcome, life can become miserable. You often prevent yourself from taking actions or doing things which you're meant to do, you're supposed to be doing, you're good at doing. You know you can move on and move forward, but so much of dread, so much of fear, so much of unnerved feeling that you often prevent yourself and compromise in a situation, in a relationship, in a financial circumstances or a job scenario where you know you have no choice, you suffer silently. But what if you step out and you have to embrace something unknown, something terrible, something difficult, something which you cannot handle? It's better to remain where you are. We all go through that. The dread actually can become a paralyzing factor. I'm not saying paralyzing in the sense you wouldn't move your hand or legs, but you literally kind of become dormant, static, passive, inactive, unavailable, and be in your own shell or a cocoon. And that happens pretty often. Now, how do you overcome this dread? There are two ways. One is the temporary one, and another one is deep acting one. Now, what is temporary? Well, the temporary is reducing the emotional charge, and that can very well and easily be removed with radical statement. And I'm going to give you some of the radical statements. And in a long term, or in a radical way, if I say, if you want to address that, you've got to expand your awareness. In a simple word, if I can explain what a child dreads, adults don't. Because adults know the bigger picture, a larger picture. The awareness makes a lot of difference. The consciousness development makes a major difference. Well, so how do you develop your consciousness? Of course, you open up to the possibilities, to know the larger picture, to know the relevance, to know the peripheral story as well as the central story, to be able to see things from the satellite point of view while being in the middle of the situation. Now, these are all concepts. When you're there, you know it. You don't dread it anymore. Well, so slowly and gradually we can develop our consciousness, and we can have more and more awareness. To have that awareness, we need to venture and look beyond the usual paradigm. Now, for you to be able to look beyond the usual paradigm, you need to be free from your emotional charge, and also you need to be free from certain limited beliefs. Now, for you to be free from the limited beliefs and emotional charge, you need to work towards that first. So the steps are letting go of restricted beliefs and emotional charge, opening up to the new possibilities in a safe way, expanding your awareness, and familiarizing with new. Once you're familiarized, you don't dread it anymore. The dread is only till the time you are unfamiliar. The more you get familiarized, even the most dreaded things becomes fun and challenge. And we all reach there eventually, but most of the time we reach there when you have no choice, but you feel pushed to venture the territories you've been dreading to venture, right? Uh, how about doing it proactively by recognizing your fears, your dreads, and recognizing your inhibitions, self limiting beliefs and ideas, and stepping beyond so called cocoons and the boundaries that you have created, expanding your horizons, and opening up to new possibilities. This is how you actually metamorphose from a cocoon to a butterfly. And that's the transformation all about. How do we really take it one step at a time? Let's address the very first step, and that is the emotional charge based on the old beliefs or old ideas. Let's address that first. I want you to just tell yourself that it's safe to be courageous, because most of us even have been pre-programmed not to be courageous by our authoritarian caretakers because they were very scared of our courage. And we have even been pre-programmed to remain little meek, submissive, fearful, because that made it easier for them to handle us, isn't it? But we don't have to be that child anymore. We're adults, and we have to assure ourselves that it's safe to be courageous, because if you find courage unsafe, if you find that courage can put you in trouble, you will never take the next step forward. So open up to the possibility of safely enjoying a courageous life, and that courage could be anything for anyone. It could be just traveling solo. That could be a big courage for a very sheltered young woman who's never been allowed to travel alone. And it could be a big courage. And for somebody, it could be a courage to fly an aircraft after taking a proper training. It could be courage to invest a sizable amount of your money, and it could be a big courage. For a young person, it could be a courage to propose somebody whom you loved and facing the risk of rejection. The courage can be different things for different people. However, one thing is common, is getting out of your comfort zone and taking that first step with racing heart and sweating and having the exciting breath and all your thoughts gushing in, what if not, and yet doing it. And once you do it, that feels so good. Okay, you finished. What if you fail? Nothing. Life goes on. Who says that everybody has to be successful all the time? Look at children. Look at you. When you grew up, you never started walking without ever falling down. It happened. Everybody falls, everybody gets up, everybody starts walking. But at that time, we don't have too many expectations. So what if you fail? What if things don't work out well? What can go wrong? There's always another opportunity. Even so-called death happens. There is life after death. Even so-called loss happens. There's some gain even in that loss. However, when you never take a chance, anyway you've lost sizable opportunities and time. How about risking a little bit? Take a calculative risk. Take small risks every day and open up to the new possibilities. It could be just talking to a stranger, doing the kind of things you've never done before, trying out something new, opening up to new possibilities. Come on, you'll have plenty of such things that you can do, even if it is a lockdown time. You can always pick up your phone and call up somebody whom you've never been confident enough to speak to. Do it once and see how it feels. What would happen? Nothing. The life doesn't stop there. The life stops when you stop yourself from living life. And you stop yourself from living life when you succumb to your dread and your fears. Why stop yourself? Come on, open up and figure your way out. I'm going to help you with some of the radical statements. All right, so close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths. And I'm going to go slow so that you can recite the statements after me. And together, when we recite, we bring about a huge shift in people around us. Continue breathing in and breathing out. Breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. Breathe in a lot of courage. And breathe out your fear and dreads. Breathe in a lot of courage. And breathe out the fears and dread. Continue breathing in courage and breathing out dread. Take 7 such breaths. And slowly switch over to normal breathing. Recite after me. I revive my courage. I recognize my courage. I realign my courage. I reorient my courage. I reposition my courage. I revive my courage. I recognize my courage. I realign my courage. I reorient my courage. I reposition my courage. I revive my fears. I recognize my fears. I realign my fears. I reorient my fears. I reposition my fears. I revive my need for fears. I recognize my need for fears. I realign my need for fears. I reorient my need for fears. I reposition my need for fears. I revive my need for fears. I recognize my need for fears. I realign my need for fears. I reorient my need for fears. I reposition my need for fears. I revive my resistance to let go of my fears. I recognize my resistance to let go of my fears. I realign my resistance to let go of my fears. I reorient my resistance to let go of my fears. I reposition my resistance to let go of my fears. I revive my fears and insecurities. I recognize my fears and insecurities. I realign my fears and insecurities. I reorient my fears and insecurities. I reposition my fears and insecurities. I revive my dread. I recognize my dread. I realign my dread. I reorient my dread. I reposition my dread. I revive my need to be cocooned. I recognize my need to be cocooned. I realign my need to be cocooned. I reorient my need to be cocooned. I reposition my need to be cocooned. I revive my need to play safe. I recognize my need to play safe. I realign my need to play safe. I reorient my need to play safe. I reposition my need to play safe. I revive my fear of explore the unknown. I recognize my fear to explore the unknown. I realign my fear to explore the unknown. I reorient my fear of exploring the unknown. I reposition my fear of exploring the unknown. I revive my fear of letting go of my fears. I recognize my fear of letting go of my fears. I realign my fear of letting go of my fears. I reorient my fear of letting go of my fears. I reposition my fear of letting go of my fears. I revive my unhealthy associations with courage. I recognize my unhealthy associations with the courage. I realign my unhealthy associations with the courage. I reorient my unhealthy associations with the courage. I reposition my unhealthy associations with the courage. I revive my association of courage with loneliness. I recognize my association of courage with loneliness. I realign my association of courage with the loneliness. I reorient my association of courage with the loneliness. I reposition my association of courage with the loneliness. I revive my association of courage with disapproval. I recognize my association of courage with the disapproval. I realign my association of courage with disapproval. I reorient my association of courage with the disapproval. I reposition my association of courage with the disapproval. I revive my need to have courage to be courageous. I recognize my need to have courage to be courageous. I realign my need to be courageous. I reorient my need to have courage to be courageous. I reposition my need to be courageous. I revive my courageous self. I recognize my courageous self. I realign my courageous self. I reorient my courageous self. I reposition my courageous self. I revive my courage. I recognize my courage. I realign my courage. I reorient my courage. I reposition my courage. This is Atman Parmar talking on From Dread to Courage. You can indeed let go of emotional charge of fears and dreads in no time and rediscover your courageous self. My guidance would be to focus on your courage. We all are courageous. It's just that we like to face our insecurities, fears, and worries, thinking that they will keep us safe and protected. rediscover the courage within. Stay tuned, keep listening, and see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. India time. Thank you for joining. Bye bye.